Let's go live now to Sydney, where the Trade Minister is speaking about China blacklisting Australian coal.
24 hours in relation to Australian exports, and particularly as it relates to exports of Australian coal. Our government is very, very concerned that these reports in Chinese state-owned media about alleged meetings of largely Chinese state-owned companies suggesting that they would in some way boycott and discriminate against Australian product going into China could constitute a breach of China's commitments to the globe in terms of their membership of the World Trade Organisation, in which they are committed to operating in accordance with good market principles, as well as their commitments to Australia in relation to the agreement signed as part of our free trade pact between one another. This is yet another instance of a cumulative series of events and actions that Australia has faced throughout, particularly the course of this year, but dating back over a couple of years now. This cumulative series of actions has prompted us to call it out and to raise our concerns publicly here in Australia, directly, of course, with China through all of our diplomatic channels available to us, and ultimately to already do so at the World Trade Organisation. We intend to continue to pursue every avenue to defend the rights of Australian businesses to trade in a manner consistent with the undertakings China has made to Australia and to the rest of the world. These actions don't just have impacts in relation to Australia's trade, but ultimately they have flow-on impacts in terms of if China is shifting from using Australian coal to coal from other producers around the world, well, that's of detriment in a range of different ways to Chinese production. Australian coal is around 1.5 times more efficient in terms of energy production than most other competitor nations, including Chinese domestic coal. That means that to get the same level of energy generation, China will end up having to use more coal from other sources and generate more emissions from those sources, which will do anything but help China in terms of meet some of the commitments it's made to the world around emissions reduction as well. So these actions, if true, would potentially constitute discriminatory action against Australian producers, potentially constitute a breach of the type of undertakings China has made to Australia and to the world in relation to their trade practices, and potentially harm China's ability to meet the other types of commitments it's given to the world in relation to its emissions profile. So altogether, we will continue to work as hard as we can to defend Australian industry, but also to work with Australian industry to diversify. In terms of our coal exports, it's important to recognise that although China is a significant market, it's not our largest market, and we do have significant markets in Japan, in the Republic of Korea, with India, strong growth recently in relation to Vietnam, and so we continue to work in a range of other markets where our government has secured trade agreements or continues to deepen trade ties to make sure that all of those exporters can have as many choices available to them as possible in relation to the distribution of their products.
Have you any reason to doubt the reports that China has directed power plants not to import Australian coal?
Well, look, I tend not to believe everything that I read in Chinese state-owned media, but we have seen a pattern of disruption in relation to Australian trade with China generally. It is well documented that a number of vessels have been delayed in terms of offloading Australian coal into China for a considerable period of time. Now, that product has, in most cases, already been purchased by Chinese companies, and Australian businesses have ordinarily been paid for it at the time it's loaded onto those vessels in Australia. But nonetheless, those delays have a disruptive impact in terms of future flows, and so we can see a level of concern regardless of the accuracy of these meetings, but these reports would only heighten that concern.
You previously said that China's actions appear to be discriminatory. You've flagged some concerns here now. Would you be willing to take China to the World Trade Organisation in relation to coal?
Australia continues to reserve all our rights across all different sectors when it comes to the handling of these issues. We do have to make sure that we have the facts behind us when it comes to undertaking WTO challenges. And the different types of disruptive actions that China has undertaken this year are of a nature where Australia can see clearly legal avenues and processes in terms of potential WTO challenges in cases like barley and wine, where China has implemented anti-dumping duties and the like. There are other sectors, such as in fisheries, timber and the like, where China appears to be using regulatory